Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Rings of Power. Oh, I didn't even title it. Season 2, Episode 4, Spoilers Review. I'm dropping the Clown Prince this weekend. I'm a Bombadil boy, Travis Snell, and I'm joined by...
I'm not a Harfoot, Kirkland Patzer.
I'm the wild man, Dylan Musk.
Wow, man. I was going to say, because I was thinking about... I said offcast. I was going to hum the House of Dragon theme, and it's not House of Dragon, obviously. Can anyone hum me the theme of this? Is it like implanted in your brain yet? Because I find I find it's a nice song, but it's not catchy per se. You know.
Ever since you said the Game of Thrones one, now that's all I can hear. So I feel like you kind of corrupted me in that sense. I can see the visuals of it. I love like the intro itself, but I would agree. I don't think the song is.
And I do not like the intro, which is why I skip it, and then I probably am not getting the theme ingrained in my brain.
That's fair. I liked the intro. I watched it, I think each time last week, but this week I did skip it. I think I've had, I like it, but it's not like I gotta see it every time, But even then, like there's,
You're a busy guy. You don't have time for TV intro these days.
No.
A minute of sand moving around a table. Like, come on, what are we doing here?
I feel like I used to skip it. Now I watch it. I found out that it's supposed to be like a recreation of the Song of the Ainur, which is supposed to be like what created the universe. So ever since I heard that fact, I'm like, I want to see this. And then I don't really get the audio attachment to it, but I guess it's just more the visuals of the way things are ebbing and flowing in that way. But looks great. Visuals, of the show remain fantastic, even in the intro.
Dylan, per our conversation off cast, the Pop Shop Sour Key Flare, I don't think it's going to be a returning purchase for me.
No. One and done.
No, one and done.
Fair enough.
But what's not one and done is this show, because we're funny enough, now we're halfway, because we talk about 8. Yeah, halfway. We're at the halfway mark. So, Mr. Muss, what did you think of? Also, last week we talked about a whole batch of episodes, so a little different, back to reality, a nice just solid hour. So did that help? Or are you still kind of feeling a bit meh on the show? How these characters going? So where were you now at the halfway mark of season 2?
Well, sorry, one more tangent, because I want to share one other thing, which is yesterday we did a review for Beetlejuice. Go check that out.
Yes.
But at Beetlejuice, I got the trailer for War of Rohirrim there. And I got to say, getting that trailer on the big screen got me way more hyped than when we talked about it on a newscast, and I saw it the first time. So I just wanted to share that we're all somewhat negative or fairly negative on that trailer when we talked about it on newscast a couple weeks ago, but damn, seeing on the big screen, man, some of these 3D effects they have going on, some of these characters, the colors really popping, it was looking good, and I'm getting a little more excited for that show now.
I will agree with you, and I said that to Taylor. I'm like, it looks better on the big screen. He said, it hurt my eyes. So Taylor did not get
He's officially out on that review, I think.
Yeah, Taylor did not get more excited. But I heard one person behind me be like, Lord of the Rings anime, nice. So still don't think it's going to do the best. But it did look like a little bit better blown up, like a little bit more, okay, I'm not going to see in the theater, so it doesn't even matter to me because I'll just be unavailable. But I was like, this looks like an experience that even if I could sneak away to maybe with the kids, maybe later on. But I'm glad you brought that up. So
yeah. Well, anyway, back into episode 4 here. I don't know if it's hard to say. I was really not hyped on those first 3 episodes. I don't think anything really changed this week. I'm not terribly negative on anything in particular, but I'm also not very positive on anything. So I feel like I'm just coasting so far, and I hope that it kind of picks up in the second half here. But in terms of where we've gone with some of the characters, this was a very different episode, actually. It was a lot of action. It felt like a lot of action set pieces, a lot of CGI beasts and things. And I don't know, I honestly was just not getting a lot of that Lord of the Rings vibe, energy, feeling to what was going on, what was being seen here, even if it was like, this is a thing that is very Lord of the Rings, but just the way it's being portrayed in the show isn't doing it for me in the same way. I do feel like this episode had a couple interesting storyline progressions, but for the most part, very little seemed to happen. And even with one of our character groups in particular, not really too interested in the direction we seem to be going with them. And then also some of my other favorite storylines weren't even in this episode at all. So that's disappointing. But hopefully that just means there's even more in the next week and the second half of the series, I guess, overall. So, so yeah, unfortunately, not much more positive for me, but also not hating it. So
Yeah, it's funny because I just did the rewatch, and Dylan, you never watched any Game of Thrones, right?
I've seen like 2 seasons of it, but
Okay.
dropped off at some point.
It reminds me like even the first season of the show, but this season especially, that was Game of Thrones in the middle where they end up with so many characters, and as I did the rewatch, there'd be people you just wouldn't see for 4 episodes. But then when I did the rewatch, it was fine because like, okay, I'm watching it literally all together. It doesn't feel as bad,
right.
but that is the struggle when you have so much, not even just characters, like all the characters' stories are very different and very, I would say, like have massive implications for the like what we know it's going to lead to, right? So it's not like, oh, it's just a little, like I feel like even the small storyline would be something like the elf and his like adoptive son or whatever, right? But that's like, okay, now we got ants in there, like minor spoilers. So it's like, okay, they're introducing something bigger. But yeah, I will say I think I like this episode the most out of the four, which is good. I'm not sure if it is like because Dylan said there is more action, and I liked it for the most part, but I think it just had a good flow to it. But there still wasn't anything that I absolutely loved. I was like, oh man. Now, I do it for meme purposes, but I legitimately like what they've done with Bombadil so far. I'll be excited to hear from Mr. Patzer here, but it got the vibes there, and I like Rory Kinnear, and he was good performance there. So I'm really curious where we're gonna, because we talked about this with the Stranger thing last week, right? Like the Stranger character and his storyline of, oh, we're gonna get some resolution, and then maybe he'll be on to some other things. But it's like we're halfway through, and I really don't think so, right? Like we'll get into it, but he just meets certain people and learns certain things, but he's still just kind of in the same spot. So I'm very curious where the show's gonna be in the finale, and if it's gonna move much, which sounds bad, like because I think you can still have a good show even if you don't move far. But I guess hey, some people said that about the Bear season 3, which I've not seen. I just wonder if it's gonna be a lot of that because I just halfway through the season and we're getting some developments, but I just feel like season 1 did move slow, but there's just something even slower about this year for some reason for me.
I
don't know.
Since you just are doing the rewatch, like, sorry, did you just finish season 1? Like, is that what you meant?
No, I haven't. I haven't got back to that. No, I wanted to, but this week's just been too busy because the kids have been home and it's just been whatnot. So no, I only got 3 episodes in.
Your Game of Thrones rewatch.
Yeah, okay. But that's what I meant with that rewatch of it.
Because I do feel like season 1 of the show, there was a lot more progress that was happening week to week.
I felt
than at least what we've had with. I mean, it's tricky because last week we had a 3-episode dump, so that's like a lot to trudge through. But even, this week in particular really stood out to me in that way.
Because even then, when we look at everything, I don't think we saw a lot of cool Lord of the Rings lore stuff. There's tons if you're like a lore junkie and you like certain things. I'm not saying you're like the show, but I think you will appreciate certain aspects because it's like, okay, that's cool, or there's a different angle there. But we haven't moved too far with our characters. Maybe one storyline in particular, but and then there's one storyline that ended up in a place that I was like, oh, we're back here, and I really didn't like that. So yeah, I at least enjoyed this episode more. It was a bit more positive, but there isn't anything that when it ended, I'm like, oh, I can't wait to see what happens next week. It's like, okay, I just hope that it continually gets better for me so I can at least get it somewhere near season 1 quality for me at least. But I guess the show's been mixed. There's tons of people that feel like us. There's tons of people that I feel like think season 2's like a big step up. So it's much like season 1. It seems like it's a divisive show as far as what people feel about it. So.
Mm-hmm.
Viewership's down though, eh? Like, is that?
It is, yeah. It was down like 900,000, but then it still had like good Labor Day numbers. So who knows? It's always tough with Amazon because they have so much money. It's not like Disney has lots of money, but it's not like with the Acolyte got canceled. It's like, okay, viewership wasn't there and it costs a lot. Let's cut it. Where Amazon, it's like, are they even looking at the Rings of Power number? Like, are they just happy
that money in like a half an hour with their Amazon.com?
Like, are they just happy to have? Oh, we got a Lord of the Rings thing on the service. Let them do their thing, point. And that's what I just don't know with Amazon. But I do think Amazon has canceled shows before. I know that sounds dumb, but I think they have. So I'm very curious where like I will probably tell at the end of the season if this gets another season. I would say they'd maybe even do one more just to be like, hey, finish it out. But you never know nowadays, right? So, but yeah, viewership's supposedly down. But again, always tough with online streaming because who watches when what? Because that was the same thing with House of Dragons. That when that came back, it was down and then it eclipsed the first season. So I think it's also just these 2.5 year breaks that shows are on now. People just get uninvested in stuff very easily. It's not like back in the day where it's like I knew Dexter was every fall. It was starting every fall. I knew October, November-ish, maybe September. It was around that time. now it's not only is it the 2 years, it's like we don't even know what month sometimes. It's just sometime, like even like I know it's partially up top before Kirkland goes, like Ahsoka is filming next summer. Season 2 is gonna come out 3 years after season 1. And that's like, that to me is nuts. For like, how's this taking so long to do a show of this? Like 3 years in between a show that's like just like an okay, like to good Star Wars show. Like it's odd. When Euphoria happens, I understand because all these stars, but I digress. Maybe that's a bread and butter topic for another day of the state of TV and what it's like now. But Kirkland, what's the state of Rings of Power after episode 4 for you?
What's the state of Rings of Power? I think it's pretty much the same. I think it would be too early coming off of my thoughts last week into this week on just like my overall enjoyment. I mean, I guess we're halfway through the season, so maybe it is a fair point to judge my overall thoughts. And as of right now, like I would give a good thumbs up. I think across the board. I think this episode, or maybe to rephrase that, I think this week's viewing was a little bit lesser than last week's, just because last week, like I literally had like 3 hours of content to just sift through, and then like I don't know, I had time with all my different characters, pretty much all the players that are in play right now. Like I was able to kind of touch upon all of them last week, whereas this time around, there was some that were definitely left to the wayside, just because we have one episode versus 3. So I think for that reason, my overall enjoyment was much lesser than last week's, but really, really loved. I think I'm just gonna be saying this all week, every single week, but the visuals in the show are just mind blowing. This show looks so freaking good. It doesn't matter if it's just like a seal door and some lady like walking through the woods. I'm just like, man, this set is just gorgeous right now. Like everything looks so fantastic. The lighting, all of their costumes, just like every little brush in the background just looks so magical and like not in the sense of it being like bioluminescent or something like that where it looks alien. It just feels like I'm in a different world while watching this, even though some of the scenery does look very Earth-like. I don't know how to describe it. It's just eye candy for me. I love just the visuals that I get from the show, and I think that's like the biggest reason why I would want to rewatch it more so than like the plot or any character stuff. Pretty much just the visuals. Like it just looks so good. So yeah, that being said, I think there was I think our main focus this week on the plot lines are just like, now that I'm seeing them separated from some of the other plot lines that are going on, I'm like, okay, this is like by far my least favorite. I think characters that we're following, or maybe just certain stuff that's going on with the story, I don't know, I won't specify it in case someone's minor spoilers, but we spend some time with yeah, no, never mind. I'm not even gonna say anything. I don't even know it's a big spoiler or anything, but I'll just.
Are you talking about what's in my name?
What? No, I'm just saying the focus of this episode.
Okay, yeah, I was gonna say there's photos of that character. You're safe to drop.
Yeah. Like that was known for a while.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I mean we'll get to that when we get to that, but I don't know. It's not like a big noticeable drop off, like some big thing that's so egregious that just ruins the show for me. It's just, I think now that we're halfway through, someone like me that loves the world building stuff and like the real slow plays that I feel like they are big, powerful plays, but maybe they're not as direct as maybe something. I don't know. I'm really just trying to tread on the spoiler free section here, but I just feel like there could be moments in the show that have like major jumps to the next sequence, and I think this season overall has not done that at all. Like we're really taking the long path to it, and I usually am liking that, but now that we're already halfway through, it's like, hey, come on, guys, like let's get to the point. I feel
buckle up, let's go. Yeah.
I feel like the general audience members, that doesn't work really well for them as well, and
I think because my sister asked me that. She's like, should I watch the show? Yeah. And because she did like Lord of the Rings when we watched them as kids, and she hadn't seen them in a while, but I was like, I don't know. Like, I feel like you do have to love Lord of the Rings Middle Earth to enjoy this show. I don't know. I think general audiences would bow out in my opinion. And they like some have. I just mean like I don't think it has that must watch can't miss element, you know. And I think you kind of need that in a show nowadays. You know, I think a movie can. Well, that's even again bread and butter. Another discussion. So.
Yeah, so I don't know if I'm going to be feeling like that every week. It's going to be interesting to kind of look back on. But yeah, as of right now, thumbs up. I'm still liking the show, so let's just dive into it. I want to say a lot.
Let's take a dive. So we're going to be right back. If you've not seen the show, bow out. We'll do spoilers, and we'll be right back. And we're back. And if you didn't want any of that, who knows what ad you got? Maybe you got election ad. Maybe you got an ad for burrito. I got both today. But if you head over to Patreon, you would not get any of those. Not only is every single episode we do ad-free, you get a multitude of exclusive episodes, early episodes of Bread and Butter will be dropping this weekend. We did originals last weekend. Soon there'll be a Fantastic Four, the 1994 classic film dropping. That's worth the price of admission right there. That was a very fun cast. That's probably one of my funnest retros we've ever done together. We were just having a ball laughs there. So if you want to support us, we are independent content creators, so we would very much appreciate it. It's just us four, so obviously the ad listeners, but obviously people that on Patreon, you help us out quite a bit. There'll be an after time, say I'm sure sometime in September, and yeah, you guys support all the, multiple reviews, side quests, extra newscasts, stuff like that, more than the 1-2 episodes a week. That's all because of each and every one of you. So we very much appreciate it if you would take time. And if not, you can just subscribe, rate, review. It's there. Lots of stuff's on the feed right now. We just reviewed Star Wars Outlaws. We just reviewed Beetlejuice. Next week, Agatha's starting. And then the week after that, Penguin. So it's a hot and heavy month coming up here for the GeekVerse. Lots of juice going on. But QT boys, I know where I want to go. I want to go exactly what Kirkland was bouncing around from, because he's talking riddles. He sound like Gandalf confused when they're like at the Mines of Moria, blah, 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 like, and he's like, what's
I like half as you, half as much as well as you deserve, or whatever the hell.
Yeah, and half the less of you go on. Yeah, but yeah, what was the thing you're dancing around that you wanted to talk about, but you didn't want to be specific?
No, I was just mostly wanting to say, like, this is not this is a Harfoot episode, and this is an Arondir episode, and I feel like those storylines I'm now realizing I'm not that interested in. Arondir and Theo, he's like a strange, I guess not a strange son, but just the son that he's trying to get that Theo
is. He's a strange guy, I'll tell you.
He is a strange guy. And like a Isildur too, like, I don't know, we were kind of talking about it last week, but I just don't really need this guy at all in this show. Maybe like season 3 or just more of a minor character. Like,
or even just like this.
I like the idea of him being around, but just the more we follow him, I don't know, I'm just really... I find myself checking out in those moments more so than others, and like I like the Harfoot's chemistry when they bounce off each other, but I don't know, we're just getting introduced to like the store hobbits now, and I just I'm not that interested in that.
I was with you, and I get that they look like a little cartoony and kitty, but when we met the one guy with his hair literally looked like he's been like electric shock, like he looks like he's Beetlejuice. He looks like he's Beetlejuice going on right now. And it's just that for me, it's like, oh fuck, it's another thing that's going to deter us. I'm sure we'll play into it, and I'm not saying it's going to be bad, but it just feels like it's another like, okay, we got to keep the stranger busy. We got to keep them busy. What do we do? Well, they're going to meet some other hobbits, and we got Tom Bombadil, who I like, but it does feel like, okay, we want to drop like it's... I think they try their best. I think that's how they view, we're going to get in viewers because we're going to use like Lord of the Rings lore stuff, but like no one's tuning in for Tom. No one's tuning in for the Ents, but they like doing or even a Isildur, right? But like no one's tuning in to say, that guy that didn't destroy the ring, like what was it, like he met this woman who he fell in love with, that was like, I just feel like these stories, some of them aren't needed. And same thing when they meet these other hobbits, I was like, no, we're gonna be here for an amount of time that I don't think is needed. And maybe I could be proven wrong, but then I go, okay, I don't need this. And then I watch the episode, and I don't think it's overall bad, but it's just that thing again where it's just like, I'm not interested. I'm not intrigued. I'm like, man, I can't wait to see what happens next,
Yeah, I'm totally with you where I like the Harfoot stuff last season. I feel like it was a mixed bag. Like mostly I think I was positive on it, but I think sometimes it just went on a bit too long, and I was glad with where we left it off of, okay, our two favorite Harfoots are going to team up with Gandalf here, the stranger, and they're going to go on an adventure. And that to me is engaging and fun. I'm like, okay, we had our time with the Harfoots, cool. But I feel like I don't really want every season to be like, okay, here's a new halfling crew or like sub race, whatever, and we're gonna like learn about them. Like the one part I did like is when they're talking about like their building of their homes, and they found this like soft rock that they can burrow in, and even the Harfoots like, whoa, they live in the ground. Like obviously that's kind of closer to the Hobbit that we know and love from the original trilogy and all that. So I don't know, there is interesting things in there, but for me it's like a couple little lore details, but for the most part, like, okay, this captain person feels exactly like the guy who is the leader of like the crew and like the Harfoot from season 1, and then there's like these goofy side characters, and I just don't really want to do any of this. So it's too bad that after the stranger did his big power and blasted them away that like they actually got separated and like might spend the rest of the season apart because I think their dynamic was really fun together. So yeah, I'm not excited to go ahead with this. I'm like nobody in general, like that one character, the guy you were talking about, Beetlejuice hair. To me, that's not a Lord of the Rings character. I guess I'm just feeling like an old man here, where I'm like, oh, this is different than it used to be back in the day. But there's just certain things with this episode that I don't know. They're really taking me out of Middle Earth and putting me into like, I don't know, Top Earth or some other random place that I'm not. I don't have as much love for, unfortunately.
And I think it'd be better to when you tell like I mean, I said hobbits. I almost would be fine with that if it's like another set of characters did that, but it's like, of course, the other type of little folk have to meet the other type of little folk. You know, it just feels like, and I get they have something to talk about, but it just feels a little convenient, you know, and it is because that Gandalf is not there. So it does just feel like side quests for them both, right? And I think you're right where I bet it's going to be like end of episode 6, somewhere in episode 7 that they'll get back together. And I don't want that because I do like them together. And that's the same thing. Did they just introduce I always forget the other one's name. It's
Poppy.
Perry. Who? Sorry?
Poppy.
Remember I said, oh, why was it? It was weird in the finale. They made her not go with them. And then right away, like, no, actually, Poppy's joined with us. Did they just do that so that character would not be alone with the other, you know, little people? Like, I'm just saying hobbits. I don't like saying little people. The other hobbits. Like, that's why I'm like, oh, you just introduced Poppy to maybe have like a crush on a guy. And like, it's another hobbit. Like, I don't know. It just I'm with you, Dylan. Where I like those three. Even that was I think one of the more positive things I was on the first 3 episodes was their connection and their chemistry, and that split off for Gandalf to just. I like that actor playing Gandalf, but I just feel like he's gonna be spoken to for like 3 episodes, like continually now of like what he has to do. It's like Bombadil here, you know, you're gonna get an episode where he's in the Dark Wizard's cave, and the Dark Wizard's just gonna be monologuing to him for a whole episode and everything. And yeah, and even though I liked the Bombadil character, like I liked he's speaking the riddles. He's not singing, of course, but he's speaking in this way where he's saying things, and Gandalf's like, what does that mean? He's like, well, I don't know, we'll find out. Like I enjoy that character and I enjoy the actor. So that one I like more, but I just 2 episodes that's like fine. But I worry that's going to be almost the rest of Gandalf's season, and yeah, they'll get back together at the end, and then season 3 they'll be back on another hike, and we'll be exactly where we were, you know.
Yeah. No, I completely agree with where you guys were there at the hobbits. At this point, it's like I'd rather not even have them in this season. I think if I had to take them, but introduce the Stewart hobbits and like spend screen time with them and just their shenanigans, I feel like it's just kind of a rehash from season 1. So yeah, I would honestly rather just not even have them, even though like you were highlighting, Travis, like last week, I was really actually digging their chemistry. I feel like entering season 1, I didn't need them, and then just that glimpse, it's like, okay, I actually do need them. I do like this chemistry they have, and then they just separate. It's like, what the fuck's the point here? Like what's going on? What are we doing here?
At least they didn't die in the tornado like Taylor hypothesized. You know,
that was answered pretty quick.
Well, sounds like Kirkland, you'd prefer that reality if they just died in that moment.
Maybe
they could have killed the other hobbits that came to find them, and they're like, who are you? And Gandalf accidentally whipped them up, you know, and then he could have saw them like, oh, I killed Poppy and who's Nori, oh no, but then okay, it's fine, you know.
Yeah.
Not hobbits I know.
So. But yeah, so talking about Bombadillo, Mr. Tom Bombadil,
respect his name.
I feel like I like the scene more than I would have expected myself to like it.
Yes.
But like by the end of it, I'm just like what? Why do they even have this? Like, does the general audience member have any idea what the fuck's going on here, or like who this character is, or what he is, or
but
like Dylan, do you know who this guy is now after the scene and like why this is an important sequence?
This is my first introduction to the character proper, other than just Travis rifling off about Bombadil over the years.
Okay, take out. This is where you're being a token lore guy. Take it out. Why is he even in there? For the GA who knows nothing about him, he's a colorful character that gave Gandalf what he's there to do. He gave him his literal purpose, right? So he did serve a function in this episode. Taking my memeing out, he literally said, "You're here to fight. You know, you're here to stop darkness and Sauron." He said, Gandalf's like, "Which one?" He's like, "Both of them." Like he literally gave him his whole life's goal now, right? So that's where I will push back of like, oh, what's he there for? Well, he gave Gandalf vital piece of information, you know?
Fair enough. But like we're never gonna get this character explained, I would imagine, going forward in this show. But
do you need to?
Someone
like,
that is watching this, like, are they not gonna just be like, who the fuck was that guy? And like Like now we just have this guy that gave
to some
Gandalf
extent, though,
this
like,
entire
isn't that
quest.
kind of the vibe with Gandalf? And when we get him in Fellowship, where it's like he's just some random ass guy. He's really powerful. You don't really know much about him. You don't know his backstory. He doesn't have like a wife at home. You know, he's just like some guy.
You just know he's a wizard. So,
I think you pick up this guy's a wizard.
That energy to him, honestly.
That's fair. I think that's subconsciously a reason why I actually like the sequence more than I would have expected, because it was just him and Gandalf. Like hearing that he was going to be in the show, I'm like, for fuck's sakes, he's going to be like teaching Isildur life lessons here and
fighting
like,
the Balrog
just
and
balling out with a Rondir. Yeah, exactly. Like saving the day in these big battles. Like that's my worst case scenario.
No, I think he's
for this
staying
character,
here.
But
I think he's staying there.
That's why it's like, okay,
he clearly seems pretty uninterested in the grander affairs of the world,
and that's great because that's a great character trait that he should have, right? Like he is just so disinterested. He is the absolute most neutral you can be. He's more neutral than an Ent, right? Like an Ent chooses a side in the events of Two Towers, and I like how they did keep that energy about him. I obviously would have liked some singing, but I don't know how that would have. I
think you're gonna get
played
singing.
in a live action.
I think
sequence.
you're gonna.
We got like a Tom Bombadil song in the end credit, right?
Yeah, and then he like, which was funny when that hit, because it was like, not that I remember the song last week they were talking about, but it was just like came in. But like he's dropping similar kind of riddles. I think the Rory guy is a trained singer. I might be wrong, but I feel like you're gonna get him singing at least once.
I'm just picturing that one character he has in Men, where he's like, "Oh, wobbly, wobbly," and he's like going through the bar and whatnot.
You gotta watch Men after this, Kirkland. Now that you've seen him as Tom Bombadil.
If you want to see that actor play 100 characters in one film.
And it was just like a little note. I love that. I don't know when this character's probably interacted with anybody for a while, because Gandalf asked him who he was, and he didn't even remember his name. He's like, well, like, in this age, they call me Bombadil, like Tom Bombadil. But he was like actively like trying to remember. So it's like, maybe it's been like.
Yeah, he was like, what do they call you? And he's like, well, no one's called me anything for a long time.
Yeah. It seemed like for hundreds of years, maybe no one's bumped into Tom, and he's just doing his gardening and just hanging out. Yeah, I liked that. And then he brought up his wife, like, no wife, but you're here. Like, that counts as you're a person, right? Like, I liked the back and forth of it. And I like I said, meme aside, I did enjoy that scene and that sequence. And I agree with you, Kurt. I don't want him out there. I don't want him also to be like, well, I'll be with you. I just think it will be next episode. They're going to talk some more, and he's going to send Gandalf on his way, and that'll be it. There's, I guess, always a chance, because he was the one that did bring, like, they talked about the Dark Wizard a little bit. So there's always a chance he could interact with him, but I don't know if it is. I don't know if it's by like I'm going to help you take him down, which I'm not sure. Then we can revisit that, but.
I hope it's purely just like an advisory type role that he has. I like the idea of him very indirectly kind of like helping push along the events, because like although he's a super neutral character, doesn't get involved in things. You can make the argument that if Gandalf never had this conversation with him, like we never had the Gandalf later on. I know the Peter Jackson, the other Lord of the Rings story is completely separate, canonically, but. I do like that idea, at least if he just has. It's interesting because it is like words of advice, but it's like written in a riddle to like more so than like a professor trying to like just have a really eloquent way of like getting a point across. I feel like Tom Bombadil just like says things and then people like take meanings from it, and then he's just like, oh, okay, you took it that way. And like, that's just kind of how it is. It's not like he's saying things to have a direct, like answerable question, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
And
except he was direct in this episode when he's like, you're here to defeat darkness and Sauron.
He's not perfect. He's nowhere near perfect Tom Bombadil. He definitely wasn't singing as much.
But it's not like he's like giving him a quest list to be like, okay, so first you go take out Adar, and then like
go talk to this
here's
guy.
Here's what Sauron looks like. He might go by Halbrand. Like he's not, not giving. Well, at least yet, he's not giving him that detailed.
Yeah.
His orcs killed him one day in his tower.
I was one of them. I was in that mob. I stabbed him.
Celebrimbor has a hard on for him for whatever reason.
Yeah, don't talk to him. He's an idiot. He knows no songs.
Yeah. As I said, this is my kind of first true introduction to this character. So far, I'm liking him. I mean, it's like not a lot has happened yet, but I like some of the conversation we have going on. I love the actor. I think he's a great pick for someone like this, and he's always like everything I've seen him in. He's just like completely different.
Yeah.
In the way he acts, so he's just a very versatile guy. So I think he's probably a good pick for a character like this. And yeah, so I definitely have some lore questions about him, but I think for me, like, whenever we look at Lord of the Rings, there's the men, there's the elves, there's the dwarves, there's the orcs, but it's like always like that. The wizards have like just such an interesting ethereal essence to them, like so much mystery around them, and even like through our retrospectives that we do with the movies. Kirkland talking with you and like just getting a lot of information there. My other friend Cody, who knows a lot of this lore, he's like taught me a lot about these characters and their history and whatnot. And I still feel like even though I learned some things, there's still so much I have questions about. And that's what I like. I never feel like I want to know everything about them. I want there to be that mystery there. But even, of course, Sauron and Gandalf are fantastic characters. And even Radagast, the Hobbit movies aren't perfect, but I still like what's going on there just because it is so weird and different and interesting. So I'm curious where Bombadil falls in that chain of command. He's talking about how he's been around since before there was trees and stuff. So, but he's not in that. What is it? What is it called? Istar? Is it what they was calling him here?
Istar. So the Istari, that's like what the wizards are. That's another word for them.
So where does Bombadil fall in relation to them in terms of his backstory?
That's something that's never been like actual concrete. Like there's theories that he is Aru, like Aru Iluvatar, basically the one god, like the one that made everything, the one that sends Gandalf back personally when he dies.
I don't like that theory.
I mean, like they're all fan theories because none of it is actually confirmed. The most accurate description is that it's literally just a character that Tolkien and his brother like made up just like during their stories to just have a character that they made up in these stories so that it's like a reoccurring thing. That's why it's like it's really interesting.
Wait, don't they make up all the characters? That doesn't make.
Like I guess not attached to the world. Like someone separate from like what's the way to describe like oh, you never saw The Matrix. I was gonna make a Matrix reference there, but like a character that's like a part of the story. So like Sauron, Gandalf, even like certain gods would be of that. Like they're contained to the physics of the story of Lord of the Rings. But then Tom would be someone that's like interdimensional type character,
He's
like
Deadpool.
that.
He's like the Watcher or something.
Yeah, exactly. Like it could be in that.
But then he can
realm.
He can insert himself into the world at points too.
I don't know about that because it's just never been detailed.
I think he could, but I think he has no interest in it. I think he has no interest in it. And I think that's one thing that I've always taken from with my theory is maybe there was a time that he had some urgency, but because he has been alive for so long, he's just kind of lost that and he's seen so much and maybe learned so much. And I think that's where in the chain of command, I don't think, to me, he's like this he's like an outlier. He's like even though he could be all powerful, he's like the black sheep of the wizards where it's like, yeah, like Tom's like one of us, but he's not really a part of the family, like he's like twice removed. Like he has all this stuff, but I don't think he's concerned at all. He's just kind of like an outlier to everything going on. Why, I know Kern gave that explanation. Why Token actually introduced him, I really don't know, because I guess maybe he just wanted a fun character, and I guess like he does provide some levity. I feel when you're reading the books, like he's kind of like a goofier character at times, right? In his songs, so I think he's just to add some moments. And now that he doesn't pop into the middle of Helm's Deep or anything like that. Don't get me wrong; it's more at the beginning when Frodo's starting his journey. I can't remember where they bump in. Like I'm trying to think of the movies because it's been a while since I've read it. Where it's a bit in between the Shire and Prancing Pony. Him and Sam bump into him.
Don't they like go to another Shire town or something like that?
Yeah, like the Shire sequence is really long in the book, and like I don't know if it's exactly in the Shire, but like Hobbiton in general, like that is where they find him.
Yeah, he's on the outskirts there.
Like Old Bill, it's like their horse that they have, and then when they get to Moria, Sam sends Old Bill away, and like in the book, that's basically one of Tom Bombadil's like not his horse, but like his companion. So like he just walks back to Tom Bombadil after that sequence of the story, and
that's where it's like
he has influence in the world. That's what's interesting. Is like, yeah, you could maybe jot him to being a wizard. You could jot him to being a god. Like that's what's interesting about him is there's so many theories, and none of them like you can't say all of them are wrong or all of them are right. Like it's just because we don't have concrete answers onto the character, and to me that's what makes him kind of interesting because he is just such an outlier amongst every other character that Tolkien has made in this world.
Because maybe he is helping. If that's his pony, there could be a backwards way of, indirectly helping.
So like, the easy answer for what Tom Bombadil is, he's just Tom Bombadil, and that's just what it is. Yeah. Just leave it.
He's whatever you want him to be. Whatever you want him to be.
Yeah, because we don't actually know. So I think, clearly his own description of himself, like he's been there like very, very long. Like he's calling Gandalf basically a child in this moment, right? Like Gandalf has been here for not a very long time, and he's been there very, 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 very long time, like probably even longer than the trees, which is like basically the start of the world. So yeah.
It's a long time.
Yeah.
Interesting character.
In terms of that Gandalf element of it, I think this is like just one of those things with prequels where it's like, I don't think I want this Gandalf like storyline where he doesn't know anything. I was hoping that like, okay, he comes down from his meteor thing. He's obviously like very fuzzy on the details. He doesn't know what's going on. He's got like, a coded message that's like telling him where he needs to go, what he needs to do. But I was hoping that I guess he would just kind of like shake it off at some point and then not be the exact same as he would be by the time like Fellowship or even The Hobbit rolls around. But I don't know. I don't know if I'm ready for this like Gandalf like training sequence, learning stuff. We'll see if it becomes interesting and works out. But I guess it's just not. It's just one of those prequel things that I don't really need to see Gandalf learning these things personally.
To me, it's like you want to see Gandalf being Gandalf in a different time, right? And that's something where I wish Taylor was here. That's something I would give the prequels credit for, is what they did with Obi-Wan, where there's parts where I had to learn when he's Obi-Wan, but when you meet him in Phantom Menace, he's pretty much Obi-Wan, and he's an apprentice. And the good thing with the benefit they have is each movie they do a time jump, right? But it's like, okay, here's Obi-Wan as apprentice, here's him as a knight, and then here's him as a master. Where this is just literally like we have to form Gandalf, almost like Tom said, like from a child to the character we know, and I do wish it was, okay, this is Gandalf, he had that, the inspiration, the reveal, he's with Nori. Now let's see some adventures of him as Gandalf, of course learning and becoming more like the character we know and love, but he still seems very much like just like a created character. Like he's your character when you open up Elden Ring. It's like, I want to create a character, I'll create Gandalf, and he's just learning everything. Like that's where he's still just this avatar that and it's odd though, because he has knowledge. Like I said that last week, where there's times where he'll say things to Nori and them where it's like, well, this doesn't make sense because he shouldn't have this, but he's starting to remember it. So I'm kind of with you where I wish we got, I don't even know if I need him to do your mission Sauron and defeat evil. I kind of wish he'd like get there by himself, like maybe see something and be like, what's this? And like, oh, well, that's X, Y, and Z. That's Sauron, or that's Adar. And be like, well, I should do something. I have these gifts. I could help people. Even if it was just, maybe the Dark Wizard will do that, showing how to control his gifts, but like his powers and everything. But yeah, I don't know. That's the tough thing. I just feel like he's going to get lots of exposition the rest of the season, and I don't want that.
I also feel like Gandalf's the character. He wants a goal accomplished, and he'll work towards it. But he's often like trying to help others achieve that goal. And I've always liked that angle from it. And part of it is just like, okay, obviously he can't take the ring in Fellowship, because if he turns evil, that's really bad news for everyone. But I still feel like in general he just like rises other people up, and so I'm curious to see if that's what's going to happen here. I mean, I imagine part of this training sequence is him learning how to like contain his powers and use them more effectively. But I'm curious whatever other kind of roles that'll take in terms of like how that'll affect his personality or disposition. I don't know. We'll see if that's just something that like, oh, the Gandalf that we're used to is in like his old age, and he's more wisdom now, and that's why he wants to get other people to accomplish these goals rather than himself. And maybe at this point in his life where he's young and spry, even though he's still got a big gray beard, maybe he wants to be more active in taking down evil and forces, actually wants to stab Sauron in the face potentially.
Yeah, potentially. Yeah, for what we've gotten with the character so far, I think I would have preferred if he was, I wouldn't say not in the show, because I do like what Travis said of just like, I do like coming into it, I did want to see what this Istar, what this Gandalf would have been like in this era, because I don't really know what his early journeys were like when he first came to Middle Earth. So that could have been really cool. Now that we're not getting that, I really would have just been okay if he's like an extreme like side character, not like an extra, but like he's doing things in the world that we're not seeing on screen, and then he just checks in with our main characters every once in a while, and like you said, Dylan, like just kind of uplifting other characters and not just making their morale higher, but just like giving them little assistance as they need. Because yeah, I Gandalf is one of my favorite Lord of the Rings character of all time, arguably my favorite. I truly love that character so much, pretty much for what was just showcased. I mean, entirely because of what was showcased in the Lord of the Rings novel and the Hobbit and just those materials. So this is a very different character than what we get there, and so far I'm just really not. I don't know. I don't hate it. I just really don't like it, and I'd rather spend screen time elsewhere, like with Anatar and our other elves. Not Isildur, not these other guys.
At all. Yeah. Didn't well, you got a lot of other elf action this episode. Well, I won't say
Arondir. I like Arondir as a character. I don't know. I want him interacting with others, other than
he's badass, but he's a little dry.
Yeah, and that's a good point actually. I mean, maybe I need a dwarf to pair up with him. The classic Legolas Gimli pairing up. But I really love all of our dwarf characters. I feel like, not to just follow the trend of pairing up an elf with a dwarf, but I just feel like that would be a more colorful personality to bounce off of him because, like you said, like he is very dry, but now that we say goodbye to his lover, all the elves are what, sorry?
They're kind of dry too right now. Like Elrond and Galadriel, they're in like war mode, so it's just like, and they're chosen to do the storyline where, of course, they're not getting along. Which I'm like, I don't know how much I'm into this. I'd rather them just be. I guess it's not compelling the issues they're having, so I'd rather them just be getting along, deciding we're gonna take down Sauron. But this brother sister like having a mini feud. It's like, I don't know. It just, you got to kind of get your stuff together. And I didn't mind the whole battle, but even when they're like, she's doing it to save us. And everyone's like, no, for the ring. And it's just like, I get what he was saying, but he made it sound like, nah, she didn't give a fuck about any of you elves. It was actually just the ring she was cared about. And man, I was so bummed when she did cool action scene. I like little moments where they threw like an axe and she like used it to light her arrows, and then she shot at them. Like very fun, cool stuff going on there. I actually wish it was longer, but then when she's on the ground and she turns around and it's Adar, I'm like, fuck, like here we go again. Like there was we're just gonna get the reverse of last season. There's an episode where she had Adar captive and they had a conversation, and that's what we're getting this time. And I'm like, oh, already? But then I go, right, we're midway through the season, and as I said before, I just am not digging the orcs and Adar right now. So I'm like, like even then it's just like Galadriel's what are we even doing with Galadriel even right now as far as, okay, she's on this mission, she wants to protect this ring, and I get it. Even that's like, did you need to do this? So like, get on your horses and just ride or run. And I found the scene very cheesy where the orcs think they hear something and they shoot, and we didn't hear anything. And then the guy who got the arrow just it's like he was quiet for the whole thing. And it was like the most overacted. And then of course they use the ring and heal him and everything. But so there's moments I liked in that sequence. But again, I think Galadriel's just gonna get the Gandalf treatment where maybe they'll have an interesting conversation. Maybe I haven't got that part in the rewatch, so I can't remember if I enjoyed that episode. But from the recaps, I remember it was just Adar was explaining that Sauron was back, and she was getting that confirmed, right? So is this just like, yeah, you were right, he's back? Like, I don't know.
It's gonna be like, I don't know. I from what I got from the trailers, like it's almost like an enemy of my enemy type situation, right?
Yes.
Like they're gonna be unifying to take down Sauron, and I don't know. Just from the trailers, I'm like, I don't like this. I don't know. I don't know what's going on here. And then I kind of forgot about that sequence until this moment happened in this episode. I'm like, fuck, now we're getting into that. So I kind of had the same reaction that you had there, Travis, which was kind of funny, but. Visually it looked fantastic. I liked Elrond in season 1, but so far I'm really not liking this just whiny version of him. And like when they're like trying to choose a direction and he's like the leader now, so it's like, no, my rule is law, and I'm just like,
and why is he
fuck,
the leader?
This clearly isn't gonna go well. Like clearly should listen to the ring bearer here.
The lieutenant,
let the ring bearer decide. He should have said, but.
And why is he the leader? Remember we talked about this last few episodes ago. Like his elves tried to arrest him a couple episodes ago, and we talked about that he was already singing with the group and they didn't care. But it just feels odd that he like breaks this rule, and he is outwardly said, I'm not for you guys using the ring. I don't agree with your plan. Like he's every turn said, Galadriel and company, I disagree with you. He should not be the leader of the mission. He could be a part of it, but he should not be the number one Uno guy, in my opinion. Like, I agree with his sentiment because I still said, like, we talk about, okay, if the rings are good, that's fine. But I understand his character's point of view of, hey, these could be messed up and let's not use them or let's wait and see. So I get that. But if he's so opposed to you, I don't understand why he is the shot caller right now.
Because of our great High King, Gil-galad.
Gil-galad,
character that's going to outlast all of these characters. Pretty much.
Does he yell at?
I guess not. I guess not.
No,
I guess he dies.
He dies in the big battle,
the
right?
the battle of the Last Alliance. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Elrond gets his ring, so there you go.
Yeah, and Galadriel lives on. And technically, Isildur lives past him, right?
You're
couple
right,
weeks.
actually. So yeah, never mind. I'm putting too much stock in this guy.
How much off the top? How long does Isildur have the ring? Do they specify in the books after he gets it? It's in the movie. It looks like it's a couple weeks. But
I think it's pretty fast. Like he doesn't have it that long. It's not like a weekend.
Seeing how much of a
like,
doofus he is, I would be shocked if he had it for too long of a time.
Yeah. He's going back to the woods to show that lady, look, you can leave your husband now. I have a ring. You know?
Yeah, this elven stuff for me, it's a bit disappointing so far. There are some good things. Like it's weird. I liked the sequence with Galadriel popping off, even if she ended up failing in the end. I really did not like the battle with the Barrow Wights, is what they called them. To me, that's another thing I was alluding to in the non-spoiler section. That's not Lord of the Rings to me. That's like too Dark Souls or like too Diablo. Like it's too high fantasy. I feel like Lord of the Rings.
Even with like the Army of the Dead though, like Return of the King, I feel like that fits right
to me,
in
there's
that.
like a distinct difference between the Army of the Dead and these guys, and it's just not. It was not working for me. Like it looked good visually, and the idea of like them getting stabbed and then they kind of recombine is cool and all, but yeah, it just to me it was too high fantasy versus. To me, like Lord of the Rings is kind of like in between like mid and high fantasy. It's like perfectly in the middle there where they kind of hold back on some of those things. So I don't know. I didn't love that section necessarily, but I think the stuff prior to that, like it was minimal, but I liked it where it was just like a little mini travel sequence of them getting to that bridge, and then when they go to like the dark woods, and that's kind of when everything goes down. But I think I feel like in season 1 and this season, the province or the woods of Linden, whatever that is. It's been like one set piece. We pretty much just get like the one like Gil-galad's like throne area where he's looking down.
Yes, always.
And then we saw like the one dinner table, I think, when the dwarves came in season 1. And I can't remember like many other areas. Like it feels like such a small area, even though I know it's probably like this huge, massive, sprawling zone. And so I just like seeing a little bit more of it. Like there was one sequence when they're just getting ready to leave. Elrond and Galadriel having a little conversation there where she's like still salty that he got promoted, but she kind of like is like, you know what, I do still respect you enough that like let's just get it done. Like I'll bring the people into this crew. And even the set piece they had there, I feel like they actually like that one set, even though it was small, was probably super expensive, and it was just for a random little scene that they could have filmed once again in that same zone that they've done everything else in. So I like just seeing a little different section with some different like housing structures, and then just drone like zoomed out footage of like characters running over hills in Lord of the Rings. That's my favorite stuff of all time. So to get a couple of those scenes really worked for me. But I think the unfortunate part here is that the rest of the elves in this crew are just like no-name NPCs. Like there's no personality to them, and so I can't really buy into like them as this crew. And like it's not really the purpose because they all like 2 of them die right away, and then they're all like going back to Linden immediately, except for Galadriel, who knows where she's gonna end up, or at least that's what they said here. I'm sure they're gonna go and try and save her if they know. But yeah, it's just there clearly wasn't a lot of effort put into like making the rest of this crew interesting. But they just feel way too young and like immature for what I expect for elves, and I guess that's just par for the course for prequel territory. But once again, I don't know, not my Lord of the Rings.
And especially for me too, I thought even though they have their little rivalry going on, I thought, okay, eventually that'll break apart and they'll get back together. But the fact that their Elrond and Galadriel are already broken apart, it's like, oh, it's just Elrond with these elves, and now so maybe that's even it too, where I feel like maybe I'm being really hard on Adar, but maybe it's just the fact of just she's just back to kind of doing what she was doing last season, where other than having, Sauron with her, she was always jumping around to new character to kind of talk with, new character talk with. So I thought, okay, her with a base of elves, Elrond, maybe those younger elves, they can build up to characters we like, because she saved that one elf's life. So maybe next episode he could talk to her and thank her, and there could be something going on. I'm not saying romantic wise, just something to go, oh, okay, I care about these characters now, right? But now she's just off there, and I don't think Elrond, maybe I hope that he'll have some good conversations with these elves, and he'll reflect and see his errors and decide to trust Galadriel. But I don't know if I get that vibe from what we've gone on right now. They just felt like they were kind of cannon fodder here, and it also just feels weird. Like, I get it's the ring, but just like, I don't know. I thought elves were supposed to be pretty well. I just thought that they could take down these orcs. I guess I just didn't know why.
Or they should have gone with a way bigger crew. Like, I feel like
yeah, that too.
A little bit smarter as like a crew.
Yeah,
not even just like the crew that went out, but just the elf, like
in
everyone
general,
there.
right?
Yeah, deciding like how many people are going to go on this mission.
Yeah, maybe they'll bump into the.
And now, because they fucked up so bad, now Sauron's just gonna keep meddling with people's minds and Eringian, and that's gonna just get so much worse. We were talking about how, like, delayed they were to even send this party out, and now this party fucked up, and so it's like, God, you guys are complete failures over here.
Yeah, no elves, but I guess that is the point, right? They fuck up, so like everything happens in Lord of the Rings, right? So I guess that's always the tough thing, right? When we're like, oh, you should be smart. I guess it's just, I wish there was a way you can make the characters smarter, and then just the bad guys even more clever, and that brings up the bad guys, right? Instead of what my problem was with the first three episodes, was just like, oh, these guys are all idiots. They're just making dumb decisions. So why do I care that Sauron's like the bad guy? He's dealing with children, but no Sauron this episode, as we mentioned. Not even a hint of him or end credit or anything. So no Celebrimbor, anything like that. No dwarves. So let's take another ad break, then we'll be right back. And we are back. Kirkland, I saw your mouth moving, wiggling.
My lips were moving like the Thing from 1994, Fantastic Four. Where was I going? Oh yeah, just like that's always been a problem with me. And like, anytime I have like, bring up Warhammer for example. When you're doing a faction of elves, it's always just like broke my mind in the sense of like balancing of a game or like an army, like the show, like that, right? Like you can't just have one elf be able to take on 1,000 orcs, even though in my mind I feel like not to that level maybe, but like at least 10 orcs. Like I feel like one elf soldier that's been alive for thousands of years, that is just like they can split an arrow split an arrow with their own arrow from like thousands of yards away. Like I see these individuals that have been alive for so long to just be like those master swordsmen. Now, visually, that's probably going to be pretty boring if you just have like a crew of like 10 elves that just can't be defeated. Like they do have to have some struggle. So that's something I just try and look past. But I think in this episode in particular, it definitely stood out more of like, these elves are just so stupid. Like, imagine living hundreds upon hundreds of years, whatever these elves are living, and then you just get fucking bopped by these little orcs that have been around for like 12 weeks or whatever the hell their life cycle is. Like, I don't know. I'm normally able to look past it, but I just think because of the actual execution of it, they just do look really derpy in this episode and really stupid. And I think that's just going to be a thing going forward. Like, there's just going to be elves that just get bopped and look stupid. But I don't know. I'm kind of in the middle on the whole Barrow White sequence because I think, visually they looked amazing. I did like the combat in general. I like them kind of mentioning some like history of just like the ancient weaponry and how like just regular swords aren't killing these things. It's like somewhat trying to like fill in the gaps on like what the Barrow Whites are. Technically, these things shouldn't even be around until like the Third Age, if I'm not mistaken. Like that's kind of a major difference canonically of just what these Barrow Whites are. But I don't know. I did like their inclusion nonetheless for just like the visual of it. Even though the actual fighting of like the elves with them and the elves with the orcs, I wasn't a big fan of. And I think also just leading into this episode, I can't remember if they showcased a lot of this battle. They at least showed the Barrow Whites in the trailer, but I was just expecting these scenes to hit a lot more than maybe they did for me. So that was a little bit of a letdown there.
Yeah, just felt kind of random. Just like, oh, they're here, and then they explain it. I don't mind it because I like the visual. It was a fun little moment, but I thought it was going to be maybe a bit bigger deal, but nonetheless.
Yeah,
I feel like a lot of the white they were just standing in the background, like watching as like one would fight at a time. It was kind of weirdly
duel.
Stunted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really don't have much to add. Like, cool to see some Ents. I don't. I think we've told before. I don't
the
have much.
Entwives. We got
Yeah.
the Entwives here.
I don't have much to add on the elf and his adoptive son. I guess already in this episode, it seems like that son's kind of, I won't say forgiven him, but he's like, oh, you're not so bad, like. But they both have their own things, so they're gonna be separated. So I don't know what they're gonna do with that kid character to get me intrigued. All him separately, but I'm hoping again the elf will bump into maybe our other elves, Elrond, or some point. Maybe that'll just even make him more fun. I don't mind him being like a just kind of stern elf because sometimes those elves have a lack of personality, so I don't mind that. He gets some cool action stuff, but yeah, not much here for me. I actually did like, I forgot the name of the lady that's with a Isildur. We weren't sure if she's a fraud or what the deal is, but really like that he just caught that right away.
Good.
Yeah, I thought that was really cool of just like he's like nicely asking her questions, but it's very in a detective way where he's already knows something's up here. This doesn't add up. So I actually like that.
Smell the wild man on her.
Yeah, or just that burn too. So I just like that. If, for example, here I like to think of elves maybe being a little higher in the food chain as far as wits. To me, he showed it right there. Of right away, he picked up on it, and then he bent her neck down. So, look at this mark. And again, I actually didn't mind what they did with her character because at first she goes, no, like, I just wanted to get rid of the mark because they wouldn't have trusted me. And then in the middle episode, when she pulled the sword on Isildur, I wasn't sure of, okay, was it the story? Is she still actually like an agent of Adar and like working with them? So I think, and even then, I still think they're leaning towards she's not. We met her like betrothed, and we got to see Isildur just be like cucked out, like, oh my god, like this sucks. But like, yeah, I liked the wits he got there, but that's about it. Again, I'm similar with Isildur. I think we're all on that bandwagon of I've not enjoyed this character too much for such a massive character down the line. But
just because you have an interesting moment in your life doesn't mean your whole life is interesting. And you're not realizing that with the Isildur here.
Yeah, that's true. And again, we always joke he was an idiot, right? In Lord of the Rings, he didn't give up the ring, so so it all tracks.
Hey, he chopped off Sauron's hand though. That's something not even Galadriel could do.
I guess it's like a very like
It was
feel
a
like
lucky shot.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely.
It's more Sauron being
She shot
overconfident. He's taken. He just killed his dad. So he's like pimping off.
He
like
pretended he was injured. He's like, oh, I can't breathe. I'm winded, and then just stabs him in the hand.
Yeah, I'm trying to think what I have to add to this sequence. I thought it was similar how you said, Travis, that they with Poppy last season, how it's like, oh, she's gone. Then at the start of the season, like she's just instantly back with the crew. It's like, why'd you even do that? I felt a little bit of that energy with Estrid, where we had that kind of teaser sizzler at the end of the last, I think it was episode 3, when we see the reveal of her like burning off the Adar symbol. And I thought we were gonna like play with that for a while, but it was just like once again at the start of this episode, like Arondir's like, hey, I know what you got on your neck there. I can smell the skin burning. So it was just a bit too quick. I maybe wish we like went a little bit back and forth, whereas we kind of revealed. Now there still is some mystery around her character. Where does she stand? She's quite an erratic character, which adds some intrigue to some of these scenes, no doubt. But yeah, I think some of the love triangle stuff is a bit weaker for me, just because of the maybe acting quality from some of these people, or just even just the scenes in general. And like, yeah, whenever we're at these sequences right now with like a Isildur and stuff, I'm just immediately slightly more checked out than like other storylines as well. So maybe that's part of it. The Ents, I thought they were okay. I didn't love the CGI. Like it doesn't look bad, but I'm just I'm very much like old man over here. I just love the way the Ents look in back in my original trilogy there. So they're just a bit too shiny and CGI glistening these days than something about like the dark grittiness that they had back in the day. So I don't know, maybe that's just a me issue, but yeah, this sequence didn't really work for me that much. I didn't really like the mud trap situation. Like I think they kind of did that to show where does Astrid sign. Like she had the ability to flee there, but she went and got the stick to save them. To me, it was just a bit too much of them trying to be like, oh, you remember that octopus sequence before the Mines of Moria? Like, oh, we can do that too. It was like the same thing.
100%.
The stick, and them getting sucked in. So I don't know. they do that every once in a while in this show where they like either have a very similar line of dialogue or a sequence that's like kind of like a callback to what we've seen, previously. And in this case, it didn't really work for me. It was just like a boring little mud pit sequence. So, yeah.
Yep.
They had a nameless thing in here. That was kind of a cool little moment. That's that creature that Arondir slices up from the inside.
Oh, okay.
They get gulped up.
Right.
So the nameless things are just a cool Silmarillion type canon thing where just during the Song of the Ainur, just discourse was going on, and some of those discourses were the nameless things. You all interacted with the nameless thing in the great film Fellowship of the Ring. That's the thing that grabs them in Moria. So they're basically just creatures that are just evil, and they're just nameless, and they're just ancient. And I just like that idea of
they're not nameless. They're called dinner, Kirkland. Sorry.
the once called nameless. No, you're right. But I did like just, I don't know, just having that there, like just giving the name of the nameless being in there. It's just more world building stuff. So
yeah,
I just
even the
like
line
that.
of dialogue was very similar. It was like, you don't know what lurks in the dark depths of this world. It's very similar to that, because I think that's when they're in Moria when Gandalf says that line, right? When they're like sitting on the steps, is that when he drops that line?
I think when he's trying to figure out to open the door. And then,
yeah.
Like the hobbits are like tossing stones. It's like, you never know what lurks deep, or whatever the hell he says. Don't disturb the water.
Yeah.
I think that's all my notes for this week.
I don't really have much else to really touch upon. I really don't have much like at all on the Isildur stuff other than what you guys mentioned. And yeah, it's just wish we spent some time elsewhere.
I think that's it. I think, we've got those assassins still just threatening people. Saying,
oh my God, I laughed so hard when the Dark Wizard was just like, he's like, what happened? He took the job, whatever the fuck their conversation is there. And then I like how he's just like, I'll deal with the Astar. Like you just focus on the hobbits now, essentially, like the Harfoots.
Like,
and
why?
This whole thing started because it's like they took the task to assassinate the Istar. Yeah. And then it's like, how are you going to get him? Well, I'm going to attack his weakness, which is the hobbits. And now they fucking lost the job to take on the Istar. And now he's like, well, just take on the hobbits. That was like your little side quest that you took on. But these guys are kind of goofballs. Their badassery peaked when I first saw them. And then the more they're on screen, I just not impressed with these assassins.
And you know what's going to happen. They're going to find them and the other hobbits, and there's going to be like some comedic way that they like outsmart them and like hobbitry and everything. And
some whimsical music going on during the sequence too.
Yeah. Well, that's it. No other notes?
Noteless.
Well,
Just
there
like
you go.
Nameless creatures.
The noteless ones.
The noteless ones, yeah. Or I call it GeekVerse. Well, I won't be back. I'll be on the road. I got a field trip. Fuck, I'm a grown man. I don't go field trips. I got a trip next week. Go see some wrestling. So I'll be in Seattle. So next week you're gonna get the Pablos with the as long as they're all here, Dylan, Kirkland, and Tia. If you want to know why they're called the Pablos, check out this weekend when Bread and Butter drops. There's some fun things to be discussed there. But hopefully you guys have a good time. Hopefully you guys enjoy this episode. Enjoy all the other coverage of all the other stuff we're talking about here on the feeds. Everyone have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you next week. And I promise you, it'll not be boring.
Bye.
Bye-bye.